Give me an example, or give me a simplified explanation of how a fix would work, or how it did work historically. Something we could follow the process.
Recently, the commissioner of the NFL had done there was a story about a deposition that he had taken with regard to the issue of legalized gambling in New Jersey, sports gambling in New Jersey.
Right.
And he had indicated, this excerpt from this, that had been 3 fixed games. Now, at the time I had done interference in 1989, there was an acknowledgement by the NFL of 2 attempts to fix game. One was a 1946 championship game,
right. Oh, that's famous.
And the other was a game in a situation in 1971 where a center for the Houston Oilers named Jerry Thurm had been approached by a former teammate and offered $30,000. He was a center, and he was asked to snap the ball on extra points and field goals over the kicker's head.
Wow.
And mafia guys were alleged to have been involved in that. Those are the 2 that they had acknowledged at that time. Now, apparently there's a 3rd one that he's discussing that I don't know about, and it wasn't clear from the story because apparently that part of the deposition is sealed. But nonetheless, I mean, the National Football League turns its collar around, as one bookmaker told me, with regard to the issue of gambling, because they're beneficiaries of. If you have a bet down on the game, you're going to be watching the game, you're going to be watching the beer commercials and the car commercials. And that's going to enhance the NFL's revenues and all the money that the NFL owners make.
The 1946 game, that's the Frank Filchock game, where the guys from the Giants were approached right beforehand and offered all sorts of money, and they
needed 10 to cover. Right. And what was the final score? 24-14. They covered.
Yeah.
So they said this was an attempt to fix the game, but when in fact the bookmakers covered the bets.
Yeah. So, now you also in that book were very meticulously disproving some famous stories of fixed games.
Bubba Smith had,
particularly that one.
Bubba Smith had alleged that the 1969 Super Bowl, the Joe Namath Super Bowl, was fixed. I found the bookmaker who laid off Carol Rosenblum, the owner of the Baltimore Colts, bet. Bubba Smith had indicated he had bet against his own team. The bookmaker I talked to indicated clearly that Rosenblum had bet on his own team. The 1969 Super Bowl was not fixed.
And the Rosenblum story that followed that wonderful piece of drama that he dies under mysterious circumstances.
Well, that was one of the things in the New York Times review. The Times review said Moldea revives a discredited notion that Carol Rosenblum drowned. Was murdered when he drowned off the coast of Florida. When I said on page 360 of the book, the evidence is clear, and this is direct quote, the evidence is clear that Carol Rosenblum died in a tragic accident and was not murdered.
Right. They literally turned it on its head. You disproved that theory, and they said,
well, it took an unprecedented moment in American jurisprudence to beat my attorney, Roger Simmons, and me. We put up a good fight, and I have no regrets about that. But again, the New York Times is a newspaper that created me. I was just a grunt crime reporter until June 29th, 1978, when I was 28 years old. And God bless the great literary editor, Herbert Mitgang, God rest his soul. He wrote this fabulous story about me, which which invented me as an author. Then they destroyed me in September of 1989 with the review. But then they had the class enough to come back in 1994 and 1995 and resurrect me from the dead with not 1 but 2 great reviews for my next book on the murder of Robert F. Kennedy, where I concluded that Sirhan acted alone.
Right, by himself. Somebody else helped you get back from the media torrent about interference. I can't remember his name. Whatever happened to him, I don't know what happened to him. The one assessment from Michael O'Riordan's book, Brand NFL, about interference. There's too much information in interference for none of it to be true, but also too much unsubstantiated conjecture that undermines the more credible assertions. Is there anything to his criticism? Michael's
a solid guy, and if he's got to complain about something, I got 70 small print endnotes in the book. I mean, please come to me. I'm more than happy to explain anything. I was an expert witness in a libel case regarding game fixing in the NFL, and my job was to bring not only my own expertise to this matter, but I was to bring law enforcement people into this well. And all of us testified under oath and deposition that not only can NFL games be fixed, they have been fixed, and there's a long history of it.
Is there any of that history after the year 1988, do you think?
The atmospherics for game fixing continue to exist. I mean, the NFL's nightmare scenario is that somebody who's doing drugs has a dealer, and for whatever reason, this dealer starts to blackmail the player. I mean, Pete Rose, in the Pete Rose situation, he was stupid in that he was dealing business with a bookmaker. As soon as he made that first bet with the bookmaker, that bookmaker owned his career.
Right. So it's no longer a question of bribing somebody. It would be a blackmail route. That would
It's
be
a
the way to
blackmail
it.
situation.
Dan Moldea with probably the only sports history book of its kind, and it's a shame it's the only sport. No offense to your monopoly on the area, but it'd be great if we had this in all sports.
Listen, if interference were a horse, it would have been taken out and shot, but I'm as proud of that book as anything I've ever written.
I think you should be. And Dick Butkus is probably reading it every year and grunting
God
somewhere
bless
as we speak.
Dick Butkus.
Now an ebook available on a computer near you. Thank you again, Dan. It's good
Thank
to
you,
see
sir.
you. Good to talk to you.